Hey, good morning, Facebook and Inspired Michiana. I'm Diane Bennett with Remax 100 in Indiana and Inspired Homes in Michigan, and we are here with Brittany Young as our guest on Life Inspired today. And we found Brittany because she's friends with Emily Dybel that works on our team. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we want to remind all our Facebook watchers what Life Inspired Stories are all about in case this is the first time you've joined us. Basically, we ask 3 questions. Life was going along, and then there was some kind of ... yada, 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 and then God moment in your life that made you kind of want to follow after God. And now you're walking an inspired life. So for you, then a lot of people have numerous turning points. What is a story that you want to share before a particular turning point?
Well, it's a more recent, like, large turning point, a huge turning point, kind of, but it starts from way back in childhood.
Okay.
I'm one of those quote unquote statistics that has had the multiple traumas from early childhood.
Wow.
From like divorce to abuse to just other, like different. Not like I have a parent who's an addict. So things like that. I saw things that I shouldn't have seen when I was a kid, and my foundations weren't exactly set greatly in the beginning. Both of my parents are Christian, but we didn't really go to church when I was, we would go like on holidays. Like I remember going on Easter, and then I had nannies sometimes, and the nannies would take me to church. But a lot of times those churches were not, I didn't have the greatest experiences. They were very like, fire and brimstone, hell and damnation. And I was like, oh, this God is kind of mean. I don't know how I feel about this. And so that was like the first experience that I had, which was very awkward for me, and did not help with my getting a good foundation in life. I eventually went to Oregon because my dad had moved out there. And when I was in college, I decided, I would meet people throughout my life that were spiritual or Christian in some way, and they always had these really amazing stories that just made me feel something, and I knew something was there. Yeah,
You
like
wanted what they had.
yeah, well, there was one girl in high school that she just one day asked me to go to youth group with her, and I just randomly went to youth group with her. And I heard this amazing mission story that was just like, you could just like, it was almost like unbelievable to like a lot of people probably because it involved like them getting like shot at, and it didn't, like, the people didn't actually get shot, and when they checked the guns, like, the bullets were real. So it just like, but like the way that the guy told the story was just so, like, you knew that it was true. So things like that happened in my life. And like when I was young, being in the goth counterculture, I have a lot of friends that are agnostic or atheist, and I never have been, but it was interesting to get to know them. And like one of my best memories with one of my friends who's an atheist was us watching the movie Contact.
Okay.
Which, I don't know if you're familiar with Contact, but in the movie there's a gal who's very scientific and she doesn't believe in God, and then there's a gentleman that's there, and he is scientific, but he believes in God, and they have this whole amazing conversation.
Wow.
Where, he's like, why don't you believe in God? And she's like, well, prove that God exists. And he's like, well, you love your dad, right? And her dad has passed away at this point, and she's like, yeah. And he's like, prove that you love your dad. And she was like, whoa, like mind blown. And then it goes into more like sci-fi stuff after that. But it was one of those things that like just like spoke to me. So I had like experiences like that, but I didn't know, because of my bad experiences in the churches that I had gone to, I was like, well, maybe my path isn't Christianity. Maybe I'm supposed to follow the Jewish faith, or maybe I'm supposed to be Buddhist. I don't know. So one of the first courses I took was in like philosophies of religion. And in that course, I basically learned that like the number one thing takeaway was that they all have the same basic underlying, and that the biggest thing is about love. So I took that away with me, but things went rough in college. I turned 21. I turned to drinking, which was not the greatest thing. My mom's an addict, so it wasn't super surprising, but it did take me a while to figure out that was what was going on. that it was one of those things where it was like, I had always wanted to have kids, and I was like, I don't know if I could stop drinking to have kids. And I was like, wait, what? That's a really weird thing to like think. So that's kind of like the ways that God has like steered me in the right direction. But so I had started to take care of that stuff, and as I started seeing like therapists, I started doing more research, especially as I started getting my master's degree as a librarian. I started doing more research into psychology, and I started like reading books by Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle Melton and Eckhart Tolle. And all of these people have like psychology backgrounds, but they all have like strong religious beliefs. And I found that fascinating that these are the people that I looked up to, and that they, again, combined that science and religion. Because I'm one of those people that, like in my philosophy course, they talked about with Buddhism, there's like 3 different ways to get to Brahman, I think is what it's called, through duty, love, and knowledge. And I'm very much a knowledge person, but I always felt like me questioning was me going against God, and that was part of like why maybe Christianity wasn't right for me or something. Well, as life has continued on, I ended up learning that the Apostle Thomas was a questioner, and he's actually quite popular in like Asia to people.
Really? I didn't know that.
Which I didn't know that either, but it's something I learned after the turning point, which I should probably get to that part.
Okay.
But where things got really complicated and intense for me was probably about a year and a half ago. I finished my degree, and everything kind of just fell apart in my life with everything got turned upside down. Like everything that I thought was my planned life, it wasn't going that way. Like none of it was. And I started basically to deal more with my trauma stuff, but I'd also turned to some drinking again, and I didn't know this, but my antidepressants had stopped working. And so...
Is that common?
It can, if you've been taking them for a long time, it can happen. So it did happen, because I haven't taken them for a long time. But I didn't know this. I just knew that it was like a perfect storm type thing, and that I was extremely depressed, and it was lasting for a really long time. And I'd gotten to the point where I tried to kill myself, which obviously is not good. And that's not like... I'm a very positive person. I think life is beautiful, and totally worth living. And so like I was like, something's not right. And I had also, at the time, I lived like an hour away from anybody here, and I just felt very like alone. I have abandonment issues from my childhood and stuff like that. So I was like super struggling, and I was grabbing for like anything. I was like at the bottom, never been so low. And I ended up going to a friend's. This is the turning point.
Okay.
So I don't know if it,
Yep. No,
Okay.
I
Okay.
was
Keep
kinda
going. Okay.
I was
Keep
waiting.
going.
What is the turning point? So this is the turning point.
This
okay.
it's like I like to call God a slow cooker God, after somebody said that to me once.
Somebody called God a slow cooker God.
Right. Like he doesn't do things like quickly always. Like
He
sometimes
can.
he
Turns
can't.
water to wine.
He can't. It has happened to me.
Saul to Paul.
That's how I got back to Indiana from Oregon was a
sudden.
very quick thing.
But he does do something slowly.
Some things he does very
Milk
slowly. And that's why I like sloths.
Cool. There you go.
One reason, they're my spirit animal.
She has sloths. I don't know if y'all can see her skirt, but she has sloths on her skirt. So
I love sloths.
okay, so this turning point thing happened. So what's the turning point?
I had gone to a 31 Gifts, which is a faith-based company, party that my friend Tiffany was having, and I met this person named Diana, and she just was like so bubbly and alive and awesome, and I just was like,
We're drawn to her?
Yeah, and you could not like I just could not imagine anyone being able to like shut her light out. Like she just, I don't think she would let you. But what was even more amazing was after I'd stayed late with my friend Tiffany and Diana, and she started telling us about some stuff that she was going through, and I was just like, how are you going through all that stuff and yet like you're just like exuding awesomeness at the same time? And I just, she's just an amazing person. And she also happened to invite me to church.
Okay.
Because she was like, hey, I like to go to church with people. You guys want to come with me? And my friend Tiffany wasn't able to go, but I was like, you know what?
I want to go see
I'm going to give this church thing a try. Because I had told her about my bad experiences. And she was like, I promise not all churches are like that. Some of them are, but they're not all like that. So I was like, okay, I'll go. And she had told me also about the church had like a great worship band. And I love music. Cool. So the church is Crossroads. And so I went there with her. And like for the first 3 months, I cried like during every service. Just because it was just that amazing to me. And basically what ended up happening was, like I fully believe that I wouldn't have gotten out of those dark days if it weren't for God. Like I fully leaned on him, and he was my everything. He is my everything now. And it's one of those situations where, like, I think God was giving me signs and I wasn't able to understand them. But now he keeps like, as I was writing the stuff out for today, I was like, man,
he was there all along.
Yeah, like seriously, he's totally been there all along. It was one of my favorite quotes to describe that, because I think God has a sense of humor.
Oh, for sure.
So my friend Hannah, who's one of the people that has connected me to God too and helped me know him, she has a daughter who was trying to tell her what, like Psalm 23. And she said in this one part, she said, sometimes God bonks me with his staff and says, no, not that way. I was like, that is like a perfect description for like my entire life. Just Jesus being like, not that way. Not that way. So that was a huge turning point in my life, and it has really allowed me to forgive lots of people in my life, and like most importantly, to forgive myself, because a lot of the foundation stuff that wasn't set up caused a lot of guilt in me and shame, and basically, like, you know, with depression, part of that, you know, part of it's a chemical imbalance, and I fully believe that people need to, you know, go to doctors and therapists, but like if you're depressed, you're not going to reach out for that unless there's somebody pushing you. And by somebody, for me, it was God. It was like I always talk about the kitschy like picture on the wall that's like that story about the two feet footprints in the sand.
In the sand.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden there's one and people think, oh, God left me.
You
but
left
no.
me in the hardest time. No, that's when I carried you.
Exactly. That part is like,
right.
To
Okay,
me, that's like life.
So you got turned,
mm-hmm.
and Diana got you going to church, and at church you felt like, oh my gosh, you've always been there for me. Now you're following God. So what does it look like to follow God today? So how do you stay connected? You've gotten connected to God. How do you stay connected to God? How do you try to pursue him instead of going, not that way? How do you, okay, which way do you want me to go? Because I don't want to get knocked in the head again.
Well, for me, I pray every day, and most of my prayers are pretty much, there's some variation of basically like, God, please give me wisdom, understanding, and serenity, because only you know the path that I'm supposed to take. And I definitely, like, I tell him all of my worries, and I let him take all of my worries. And then the biggest thing is I don't know if you guys remember in the 90s they had those What Would Jesus Do? WWJD bracelets.
Yep.
I thought those were like the like super kitschy things, but like I really kind of want one again now, because for me, I always remind myself during the tough times, like, to think, what would Jesus do in this situation? Mm-hmm. You know, or what would, you know, one of his disciples do? What would make him proud? Right, what would Thomas do? And it's funny, the Thomas thing is funny because, like, my grandfather, my dad, and my brother are named Thomas, and if I ever do have kids, even if it's a girl, I'd want to name her Thomasina, because it's a very important name, and it means even more to me now because of learning about Thomas.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, guys, I just thank you, Brittany, for sharing your story and being brave
Thanks for
and
having
bold
me.
to tell Facebook all about it. And now life's not perfect just because you're following God, and you're not worry free. There's times when you
No.
probably still worry. Yep. But then you just turn back to him again and go, okay, I gotta come back to you, right?
It's a lot easier to bounce back, and usually he'll give me some sort of signs that he's there that make me laugh.
Good.
Like today, he told me to wear my sloth skirt.
That's awesome. Well, we wouldn't have talked about sloths if you hadn't worn it.
Well, no, we probably would have because I love sloths.
She loves sloths. That's awesome. Very cool. So if you guys have stories similar and or questions similar and you would like to have coffee or something like that with Brittany, she did confirm that she would love to do that with you. So message us right here in the feed. If you have other stories of people that had turning points that are now walking with God, we'd love to share their stories. So message us here or email us at team@inspiredhomes.com. So thanks, Brittany. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Facebook. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.